Here in this video, we will be going over everything you need to know about our markets here today and this week, as well as AMC Stock. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and thank you for watching. Let's get started. So, first things first, what happens with AMC Stock this week is going to be largely connected to NVIDIA's earnings. Now, we're going to talk about this a little bit more in the next video, but I think it's clear NVIDIA stock is going to fall. Even if NVIDIA gives you another huge beat, another blowout to guidance, the question is, does NVIDIA fall, 3 to 5%, or does NVIDIA crater? Options are pricing at 11% this time. What I've noticed this earnings season is if a stock is falling, it's usually falling about exactly what is priced in the options market. And that's been pretty consistent. Like if a stock's pricing in 5%, let's say, plus or minus, up or down, it's usually moving about 5% up or down, regardless of what the numbers look like. As long as they just come in line with expectations and you get some maybe decent guidance or bad guidance for that matter, you're usually moving about 5%. Now, sometimes you can do a 2 to 3 times that standard deviation move and see like a 10 or 15%, fall or rise. And that's based on if we get better than expected information. Now, it's almost not possible, in my personal opinion, that we're going to get better than expected information from NVIDIA because the law of large numbers, because you went from 7 billion to 20 billion in revenue, at least that's what it is expected. It's going to be very, very hard for NVIDIA to give us anything that impresses the markets. And considering NVIDIA is trading at 96 times earnings, it's one of those situations that is not pretty. Now, NVIDIA is only trading at about 38 or so times 2024 numbers. The problem is that's based on these H100, A100 GPUs staying at $35,000. And their new GPUs that come out in the summertime, seeing better pricing than that. If NVIDIA gives you any signs that pricing could fall, that's not going to be good news. And actually what I've found is GPU prices have been falling. I mean, especially for your, $1,000 GPUs, $2,000 GPUs, still very, good GPUs. Most of the time, these are for like gaming or like crypto mining. They've actually been falling, right? And just look up on Google GPU prices to decline, and you can see GPU price index. It says NVIDIA GeForce RTX prices are on the decline in Europe, but I'm still not seeing any bargains. NVIDIA GeForce RTX sees steady decline in prices globally, falling back to MSRP. Now, that's important because these, GPUs, these H100s that have been selling for $35,000, the MSRP is about $8,000 on those GPUs. So they are getting a massive premium right now, really boosting NVIDIA's numbers. Whereas, let's say those GPUs start to come down to even 25,000. That's going to affect numbers. That's going to not be great. Or let's say 20,000 at some point in 2024. That could not be great, right? It's all based on supply and demand. You can make a pretty valid argument that maybe a lot of this GPU generative AI frenzy has pulled forward a lot of demand for NVIDIA, and there's going to be a cool-off period. That could cause the stock to fall more. And we have seen this relationship between small cap stocks doing well when NVIDIA falls. And that's because NVIDIA has sucked so much capital out of our markets from other areas of our markets that, it's made it hard for small cap stocks to do much of anything. So that's something we definitely need to consider heading into this week as far as the earnings calendar, like I explained in the next video. There's some data that comes out on Thursday. Your biggest data is going to be the FOMC minutes, and that is basically a transcript of the last Fed meeting. The FOMC minutes, I found, it comes out at 2 p.m. It does tend to give you a pretty sharp drop or pretty sharp rise when it comes out, but then you tend to just revert back to what the markets were doing previously. So if the markets were up on, if the markets are up on Wednesday and it's a bad Fed minutes or perceived as bad, the markets are probably going to fall initially, and then over the next 30 minutes or so, just continue on that upside trend. Vice versa. If the markets are down on Wednesday and we get good Fed minutes, it's probably not going to cause the markets to rally, right? At least not for a prolonged period of time. So that's something to keep in mind. I think the FOMC minutes do a pretty good job of faking people out. And then lots of Fed speakers, some data that will be coming out on Thursday as well. So keep that in mind. Now, if we do look at the StockTwits data, some very encouraging numbers we're seeing here. Sentiment is better than yesterday's, 36. Today it's at 52. Which is categorized as neutral. Message volume yesterday was 55. Today it is 53. And the participation ratio is at 54. So almost to the high side, but still not still not where we would love to see it. We do have some pretty troubling signs out there. This one is very troubling. The bank credit is contracting year over year. The only time you've really seen this in recent times was the global financial crisis. Now, this bank credit that is contracting on a year-over-year basis means there's less credit available to people, less potential spending, and less potential investment that can be, happening out there in our economy right now. And contracting bank credit has only ever in history correlated to a weak economy. And, if stocks were in a different place, I would say it's priced in. But if you look at the S&P 500 again broadly, it's not priced in to the S&P that there's any chance of weakness here, like for the foreseeable future. When in all reality, this is when you want to be a little bit on the fearful side. When everyone is so bullish that they can't see the risk in front of you, that's when you want to pull back a little bit, raise some additional cash, get ready for a pullback in our markets. I think it's inevitable and it's going to happen. When that pullback does happen, it will affect AMC. Now, I don't know exactly when that will happen or what will cause that. I'm on the lookout for that right now. But I think the markets are just too priced for perfection when you're seeing some very troubling signs out here, like the bank credit that is contracting. And actually, a great source of this information is Game of Trades on X here. And they have all kinds of different charts like this one. Analysts have cut their earnings estimates lately. S&P 500 net earnings revisions index and 6-month change in the Conference Board's leading economic index. So you could see things not really, pointing in the right direction, right? Earnings revisions have definitely been to the downward side, roughly about 3% so far. You could say that's close to about 5%. Whereas the 6-month change in leading economic activity index has actually been improving. Does show a little bit of a disparity. These things tend to follow each other. So a catch up there could definitely be around the corner. The percent of stocks above their 50-day moving average currently sits at 55.37%, which is off of the lows that you were recently at, about 43%, but well off of your highs of about 86%. This was back in December, around December 28th, when you were seeing a broad-based market rally. We will have some earnings coming out this week as well that could be important for the broad markets. Keep in mind, you do have earnings that will affect certain sectors like Block or Square on Thursday, Solar Edge Tuesday, Palo Alto Networks on Tuesday as well. Think cybersecurity, think solar, think payment processing companies, maybe even credit card companies. Tuesday pre-market, you are going to have your bigger ones that could affect the broader markets, that is Walmart and the Home Depot. Now, why I say these ones can affect the broader markets is nobody just stops shopping at Walmart or Home Depot. If they forecast bad numbers, that's because they're forecasting a bad consumer. And that is not priced into our markets right now in the slightest bit. So if that's what we get, a bad guidance, bad forecast, that's not going to be great news. And the markets will pay attention to these very closely, especially Walmart. Again, there's not that many alternatives to Walmart out there in the grand scope things. People, if they go to Walmart, they tend to go to Walmart, right? So people don't just stop going to Walmart. It's not like a it's the lower end kind of I don't want to say demographic that shops there, because everyone loves, to go to Walmart, but it captures the broad economy very well. At least Walmart does. Home Depot's more home improvement, things you don't necessarily have to do, but you want to do. But markets do look at Home Depot as kind of a bellwether to the economy also. So keep that in mind. Now, in regards to block earnings and the credit card payment processors, this I just think is funny. Capital One acquiring Discover Financial Services. Quit it. This is a joke, right? This has to be a joke. The FTC is never going to let this happen in a kabillion years. And I say a kabillion years. They're never going to let Capital One buy Discover. It's never going to happen. It took freaking 2 years to get the sign off for Microsoft to buy Activision. This is never going to happen. I do think it's funny, so maybe there will be some trades tomorrow morning on Capital One and or Discover based on this. If Discover does rally, I think that's a good opportunity to potentially get some longer duration puts, because the FTC is going to block this pretty dang soon, in my personal opinion. Just thought it was funny. I figured I would share that with you guys. Now, as far as this upcoming week for AMC stock and some of the data, you do have 12,677 calls currently in the money, about 48,000 calls out the money. In the money puts at about 3,400, out the money puts at 22,300. So decent amount of option activity here. Last week, we did see a lot of option activity as well. So I am expecting a lot of option activity to kind of come on to this week's option chain also, and potentially look at some bigger numbers here over the next, coming day or two. Give this data some time to actually update, but when it does, I do think we're going to see 100,000 calls at least, maybe 50,000 puts or so. So potentially more fuel on the fire for this week for AMC stock to move. We'll talk about that more in the video that comes out later on today. Now, you do have short interest percentage of free float at 12.23%, $148 million worth of short positions. Days to cover 1.8. 30.63 million shares that are currently sold short, 32.7 million shares currently out on loan, cost to borrow 1.04%, utilization of 51.1%, and a short score of 64.24 out of 100. We don't have any cost to borrow numbers here. But nonetheless, they were about 7% last we knew. Now, over the entirety of last week, we did have 24 orders totaling $985.76 thousand, positive order value of 46%. So this is kind of your data for AMC. Keep in mind, we do have earnings, not this week, but next week. That's going to be a big catalyst for AMC, as well as, again, NVIDIA earnings. I think I want to just say this again for the record. I think a 2 to 5% drop for NVIDIA, maybe a 10% drop, just based on NVIDIA giving us blowout guidance, blowout earnings, but kind of a cooling off period for the stock. If you do see a 2 to 10% drop based on that, that's likely really good for small cap names. That's likely really good for interest rate sensitive names, companies in the mid to lower quadrants of our markets. If you do see a 10 to 20% sell off based on potentially pricing pressure problems in 2024, a weaker than expected guidance or weaker than expected earnings, which I'm not going to sit here and forecast any of those things. I think that would be foolish given NVIDIA's, last couple of quarters. Then I think you probably get a broader sell-off in the S&P and the NASDAQ. Now, could that have a positive effect on small cap stocks? Yes, but I don't think it would just be a easy trade, if that makes sense. I don't think I don't think the Russell is going to do that good, or small cap stocks, if everything else is selling off. But it has been the trend lately. NVIDIA is down. Small cap stocks are doing well. So let me know what you think about this information down below in the comment section. Hit the like button as well as subscribe to the channel. You guys have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one.